This week we meet Fran Pittaway as she shares her unique career journey from the BBC to becoming CEO of the luxury gifting brand Biscuiteers. She discusses her early experiences at the BBC, her transition to children in need, and then her significant move to a senior role at Not on the High Street. Fran emphasises the importance of structure, purpose and decision making in her leadership style and how she is working with the original founder to take the business on to the next level. Finally, she reflects on her career journey, offering advice to younger professionals about embracing opportunities and always enjoying the present moment. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Fran. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure. We're getting a bit of a tradition. The first question is always to explain why you're here, how you've got to the heady heights of Chief Exec at Biscuiteers, because it's always good to understand that most career journeys are not linear, and yours certainly isn't. Yours is very interesting. And I think it gives people hope that where they may be like leaving university and starting a career thinking, no, that's me done. It's like you could end up
definitely
quite a few miles to the right or the left of where your starting point is.
Yeah.
So if you could give us that little bit of background, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, how did I get here? How am I here? So I am 4 months into my role as CEO at a company called Biscuiteers. It's the first external CEO. It's been run by the founder, Harriet, and her husband, Stevie, since it started in 2007. And they decided to bring in a CEO to help in the next phase of growth. Harriet's still very active in the business, but I'm there to run it. How did I get here? Well, right and left is definitely a good thing. So I grew up in Hertfordshire, did my A-levels in English literature, geography, business and media. And then I studied drama, theatre and television at Winchester University because I liked theatre, I liked media, I liked drama, and I thought I'll do something I like.
Good start.
Yeah, I did that. And loved my time at Winchester. I got a first class honours in that degree. Very proud of that. Worked very hard at that. But I think probably the main thing I took from being at university was I actually really want some structure and to earn some money in my life. So I was very keen straight away of just like, I just want a job that pays me quite well and I want some routine. I thrive best on a routine. Got a job very soon after graduating university at the BBC in their commercial rights department. So that role was clearing the rights of television programmes for BBC Worldwide to exploit them worldwide. So that was clearing the actors, the script writing, the source, the music. There was no iPlayer at that point. Video on demand was a new thing. People had signed contracts where the BBC only had the rights for 10 years. So it was basically going in television by television programme and ringing people up, ringing agents up and asking for the rights to exploit it in whatever territories, through whatever medium, in perpetuity. It was really interesting and really archaic. Now I look back that every single television programme had a pink file in a massive storage room. And you had to go down, get your pink file, read through all the contracts, find on the system who you needed to speak to. And actually, it was a really good grounding in contract reading, which I'm quite comfortable with it and always have been. And I think it's because of that role. I met some great people, worked on some great projects. And then soon after that, I think it was about 2.5 years after, ended up working at BBC Worldwide itself in the team that looked to clear rights more holistically from the actual like Writers Guild or Screen Actors Guild. So getting the rights that everyone was signing to now to kind of reverse what you're giving the rights to or to any future medium that could be. This is at a point where no one, I think iPlayer had only just been started to be talked about. It was called something like Project Diamond in the BBC or something like that. And it was going to be a big deal. And actually one of the best experiences there was going to, and this never came off, but it was this kind of 2-day away day with all the lawyers from all the different broadcasters, BBC Worldwide, ITV, Channel 4, to try and get it, like the Screen Actors Guild would have one set of rights for each broadcaster, and they were trying to get a single set of rights for everybody. And I was invited along to basically take notes kind of remind the lawyers what had been spoken about, write up all the minutes. And it was, I mean, one, we were at a really posh hotel where there was a TV in the bathroom where the bath was.
That's
So
it.
that was
You've
a win.
arrived
I
at
loved
those
that.
early days, yeah.
But it was just really interesting, and seeing sort of really big negotiations right on the front row. And they sound scary, but actually they're not. So yeah, that was probably one of the highlights of that job, and I learned a great deal. I loved working on, I cleared the rights for all the BBC Legends CDs, Old Grey Whistle tests at BBC Worldwide.
Forget
Got to
about the
work.
content they create, don't they, from their
Yeah,
TV
exactly.
programs?
So I did. It was good, but I probably had, I'd fallen into this. I'd started doing it. I was doing it well, and I remember my manager, who was a lovely manager, said to me in one of my one-to-ones, you could go really far here. You could get promoted here. And I went home and thought, I don't want to be. Like, I like doing this, but I don't see this as what I want to do forever. I don't think. And I think I'd lost a bit of. I don't know that I'm that passionate about all of this.
Yeah.
And that kind of sat with me for a bit, and was kind of like, what do I want to do? Which kind of everyone goes through every now and then. Am I doing the thing I want to do?
Why am I
No.
here?
Yeah, exactly. And a job came up at BBC Children in Need in the partnerships team. And I wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do either. But what I knew was I could really get behind the purpose. That really called to me. Like, I was a big fan of BBC Children in Need. I thought, if I'm working on something where there's a real purpose behind it and I'm making a difference somewhere, that would be nice. That would make me feel good. So, and they had this thing at the BBC at the time. I don't know if they still have it, where whatever job you move to, even if it's not a senior, they maintain your salary. So I'd got to kind of a rights executive salary, and they maintained it for a partnerships assistant at BBC Children in Need. So I didn't have to worry about taking a pay cut, and still being able to kind of afford my new mortgage and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. There's always practicalities with dreams, aren't there?
Yeah, exactly. And that was just the best move. I had an incredible 8 years at BBC Children in Need. Started in the partnerships team. So that was working with all the partners who raise money, all the businesses that raise money from, Greggs, Asda, Boots. They raised money in lots of different ways, whether that's through staff fundraising, selling of products, events, auctions. And you work really closely with someone to try and build that amount up for the year, ready for the telethon in November and that big kind of announcement. And there was only 2 of us in that team. And yeah, it was great because you got to do such a different variety. Actually, the charity BBC Children in Need was very small at the time, and it was a real muck-in vibe. Like, even though I was in the partnerships team, you'd have to help on any events that we were doing sometimes. I went in the Pudsey suit many, many times, and this was before they were invented with fans, can I just say. So I have had many a moment of like sweat dripping into my eyes while being stood next to Tess Daly and smiling for the camera, even though no one can see my smile because I've actually got a Pudsey head on. So I learned a lot about lots of different things, and about kind of marketing, commercial, and PR and events, and how that all worked together in a commercial way. And we grew over a period of time what was fundraised by those corporate partners by quite a massive chunk, and I'm really proud of that. My first year at BBC Children in Need, so my first telethon, and I'd worked from the April with all these different corporate partners. This was when you used to stand in the audience with cheques if you're a business. And so Terry Wogan would go to you, you'd kind of, we're from Welcome Break and we've raised this much. So it was my first year. It's really exciting. I'd not been on like a TV set like that. It was really cool.
It had everything, didn't it? Because I mean, I imagine the network you built from that was incredible, because you were dealing with such incredible organisations.
Yeah, that's so true, actually. But the first year I did it, Sir Terry, lovely Sir Terry, went to all the wrong people at the wrong time. So if you're Asda and you've raised 2 million, you're expecting to be on at prime time, right? You're expecting 7:38, you want your cheque raised out. You're sat in there and Terry has instructions, you're going to that person. And he didn't. He went to just whoever was near him who'd raised kind of 10 grand or 30 grand. So they all got these amazing check moments, and all these people from, you know, Asda Boots are in the audience being like, my check moment better not be being bumped to like 10 p.m, which it inevitably was. And I was actually chased around Television Centre by someone from one of those organisations shouting at me, in like heels as well, because I'd like really dressed up. You know, if you can
Not very
withstand that,
charitable.
if you can withstand that, you can withstand anything, can't you?
There's some resilience building, isn't there, as they say nowadays?
Yeah. So anyway, I could talk for ages about that part of it, but the bit that sort of was the trigger point that has got me then into Not on the High Street and then to here was when I came back from my second maternity leave. I took on the role of buyer, which the business had never had. It didn't have its own e-commerce website. And in the partnership space, the thing I loved working on the most was product, and what product, working with those retailers and what products they were going to sell to raise money for the charity. And that was all handled by marketing at the time. I think we sold through the BBC Shops eBay site or something. So I built the buying team, built the e-commerce platform, had someone come in from M&S who and from National Trust, who still remains one of the best managers I've ever had, taught me loads about the product world, the buying world. And yeah, we built a really good platform, built some amazing products. And then it was announced that BBC Children Need would move to Manchester, or parts of some of the departments would. So I was either to move to Manchester or I was to take redundancy. And I'd been at the BBC for 13 years. So
Yeah.
I was very much like, I will take the redundancy, please. I don't fancy moving halfway across the country with 2 young children. And I was devastated, gutted, in
Yeah.
fact. I mean, the tears on my last appeal were just full on, because I'd absolutely loved that. And I didn't expect ever to find a job that would match it, or find a company that would match it. But started looking for things, and Not on the High Street had been a brand I'd always absolutely loved since it started. Loved the ethos of the founders, and was like, this is similar, right? You're helping small businesses to grow their business and to have a platform. There's still a really strong purpose there that I can get behind. So I went for a category manager in prints and art role. Didn't expect to get it at all, and did. And went into that being like, this is going to be great, but I'm not going to stay somewhere as long as I've stayed at Children in Need. You know, I'm going to just do a couple of years and then move on. And I was there 9 years.
There's a pattern appearing here, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I was there 9 years because every year was completely different.
Because
And
you were there when there was massive growth and change within the business, wasn't it? It's when it really sort of matured.
yeah, exactly. I joined in 2015. It went through a huge kind of growth trajectory, evened out a bit, and then hit COVID. And that was an insane time for
Explosion,
all
yeah.
the small businesses on that platform, and any online platform, particularly that worked in gifting, because the high street shuts and everyone wants to give each other a present. So overnight, our numbers were just crazy. And anyone I spoke to, so my mum works in the travel industry and my dad works in the restaurant industry. And over COVID, when you'd speak to them over the phone, you know, they had a really tough COVID. And I'd be there, my dad would be like, how's business? You'd be like,
Yeah, nearly embarrassed to say.
plus 200. And I had such a variety of roles there. I started in prints and art. I ended up managing all the curation and category growth of home and garden, and then all categories, and then moved into the role of commercial director in 2022. Sat on the senior leadership team there. And really, that senior leadership team were really, you know, it was our job as a group to really grow the business, run the business, take decisions together, lean on each other's skill sets. So I had an incredible experience doing all
Did
of
you?
that.
Sorry, did you ever ask? You obviously said you were surprised to get the first role. Did you ever ask as to what they saw in you, what experience they'd seen from Children in Need that was transferable?
Yeah. So the person that interviewed me, Leanne, has just stepped down as CEO at Not on the High Street. She was my manager the entire time. She did my interview. And at the time, I wasn't sure she was that bothered, but I think she'd made up her mind really quickly. Yep. Let's just get this person in because they get it. I think what she saw in me, and what still remains true, is I am an organizer. You know, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not someone who, I like the detail and the things that have been true, whether it was my first job at 14 to my job now is, I like to sort things out so that they make sense in my brain. And so that it can, whatever we're doing is maximizing the output of what we're getting. So, and I think I probably showed that in my interview. I remember Leanne being like, it was an amazing presentation. Within 5 minutes, I was like, yep, she totally gets the detail. She gets where it needs to grow and she's personable. So she's going to make really good relationships with the partners in talking to them about how they expand their ranges. And I have a creative eye. I am creative in some ways, but I'm not, give me an icing bag and it's going to be a disaster. And I'm not hand icing those biscuits. I'm not skilled enough
Oh,
at
come
all.
on. Where are your new company values? Yeah, what's going on?
Someone recently said they would teach me. It's an incredible art. But I think that's it. That's what's remained true all through my life. I like things to make sense, be organised, for processes to be efficient, operations to be efficient. And I like to have a good ROI. I like the effort that you're putting in to give you more out the other side.
And
So,
yeah, I think that's been a really common theme in lots of the podcasts that I've done so far is that there fundamentally are two types of people. Those who can have a spark like Harriet did first with where you're Biscuiteers now and build it to a level. But then where those people are great is when they realise they need to bring in skills like yourself, which are the ones that how do we scale this thing? How do we make sure it's not reliable on one person? How can it grow? How can it perform to its best chance by the structure you put in? And
yeah.
to be honest, Fran, that scares me what you're good at because it's not what I like. But as you go through experience, you realise it's wonderful because there's so many roles of how you can grow. And letting go is as clever as starting the business, I think.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And it's really brave, isn't it? And when you've built a business, what I have a deep appreciation for from working at Not on the High Street, and I think something I spoke to Harriet a lot about when we were talking about me taking on the role, is I worked with 6,000 founders at Not on the High Street,
Yeah.
right? And they're very much looking to you in that platform to help them. You are answerable to them and you feel responsible for that small part of their business. But what I have a deep appreciation for is how hard entrepreneurs who start something from scratch have had to graft to even get it to a certain amount, and how I felt responsible and honoured to be part of that journey and try and help. But I very much saw it as not, I appreciated what had come, and I don't know if I could do that actually. I think, you never know, but I know that I like to look at something that's almost already there and go, how can I make this even better? I'm kind of the one you might hand the baton to rather than starting the race.
I think that, but I suppose, yeah. I mean, one thing I would say to you is, after meeting you a couple of times and knowing your character and your drive, if you were going to do it, you'd have already done it, and that's not a criticism. It's just like, so where you've actually very lucky. I think you've found your sort of superpower, and now you've been given this. So get called. Explain the last bit of your story. You've taken up. Oh, sorry. So far, you've taken on this role as chief exec from Harriet at Biscuiteers, which is quite an accolade with a lady that's built that business.
Yeah, thank you.
Since 2007. So how did all this come about?
So I was approaching my 9th year, but Not on the High Street. I had definitely started to think I've been here a long time. I think I need another challenge. And just kind of the opportunity came about through a headhunter who started to speak to me about the role. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get this. There's a theme here too, isn't there? Of like, yeah, that would be great, but
love that. Yeah,
can I run a company like fully? I don't know. But I went into it all guns blazing anyway, believing that I could, showing that I believed I could do it. And first interview with Harriet was like, yeah, she's not fussed. But I've realised that that's sort of Harriet actually is that she's already moved on in her head. She's already moved. No, exactly. But she's already moved on in her head onto her next thing. And actually, by kind of my next interview with her was I'm really fond of her, and I am in awe of what they've built over the years. There is a bespoke manufacturing facility in Wimbledon that's bespoke to Biscuiteers that has allowed a business where when she started in 2007, everyone told her, you'll never be able to scale hand-iced biscuits, has absolutely done that. And there's room to scale it even further. And there's already room there to scale it further. It's just about bringing in more commercial opportunities than is there, although there's a lot there already. There's still, in terms of some of the teams, they're lean, they're still having to be pretty agile, but the operation is incredibly sophisticated, and they've invested in the business over time. When they did very well in COVID, invested in bespoke machinery that would allow a business like this to scale. So yeah, I'm incredibly, I'm really honoured that I was kind of given the opportunity to do it, and yeah, that I've been passed that baton, but I still have her around to be able to kind of tell me more about how they got there and what works and what doesn't work. And she's got her kind of skill set is very much in marketing, in PR, in creative direction, which is brilliant to kind of have her years of experience in all of that. This brand punches well above its weight. It really, and it has been built on PR, marketing, that hard partnerships, the hard graft that comes with getting in a room, talking to people and putting it out there in the world. It doesn't just rely on paid marketing, which a lot of brands can't say, and that is purely how much she's done to drive it. So yeah, that's how I'm here in a nutshell.
And can you explore a little bit about how the baton, or the proverbial baton, was passed on?
I think we're still passing it, actually. Before I started, we had kind of, spreadsheet. That Harriet kind of had, that was, here's going to be my role while I stay in the business as kind of leading the marketing, and here's going to be what's the CEO is responsible for, and kind of revisiting that every now and then and going, have we moved that on or haven't we? I think I went into it not expecting that to happen overnight, actually, and that I would need to, although I'd met Harriet a lot through the process, that I still needed to build trust with her, that she could, and her husband Stevie, that they can trust me with everything that they've built. So I've definitely gone into it thinking, and I know with founders, it's so hard to take a step back out of the detail. She jumps right into the detail, and everyone looks to her for guidance and for answers. And I'm hopefully making a difference in trying to get people to not look to her for that, and to look for it within themselves, and to take accountability and responsibility themselves. We said before you started recording about decision making, and I said, actually, I'm always scared not to make a decision. I don't like things to be whirring around in my brain for too long. I'll take a beat and I'll have a think about it, but things only move forward if someone makes a really clear decision and everyone kind of gets on board with it. But what I learned in building my team at Not on the High Street, my wonderful commercial team at Not on the High Street, was actually, you want everyone to be doing that, not just you. They're the expert in their job. They're the ones doing it day. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're the ones doing what they do day to day. So no one should be able to make the decision better than them. I'm there to help kind of guide it or push it if they're a bit unsure. And that's one of the things I need to bring to here, is when a founder who knows the business inside out and is so passionate about every single decision, is making sure the people around them can then start to do that in a way that honours the business for the future.
Yeah. And it sounds like obviously there is a brand and a set of values deep in the business that is Harriet and Stevie, that you are now picking up and taking to that next level. But that, like you say, naturally gives a decision-making framework, doesn't it? That is easy for you then to instill into people.
Yeah, and I think it's easier for me as a new person as well, if someone says, what should we do about this? Which was starting to happen even in week one. And I was like, well, what do you think we should do about this? Because I've only just started, so I'm not sure. I'd need kind of your guidance on it.
I think when you push the trust with your team as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the more you kind of put trust in others, the more they trust you too.
Because lots of ways doing that. I had a chap from Packed Coffee, a guy called Paul Turner,
yeah.
And he had a similar founder that he took over from, and he was saying, right, you're starting on Monday, and I finished this Friday. But but what happened was very clever because he wanted to make sure it was total transfer to Paul. But for the month, they spoke for about 2 hours every day, but he wasn't physically in the office. So
Oh,
to your point,
interesting.
it was
Yeah.
quite interesting where people went, "We better ask Paul then." But whereas Paul, it was a bit like going back to your Terry Wogan days when you're in his ear going, "Right, this is what I would have done."
Yeah,
And so it's
brilliant.
quite there's no right or wrong because the structure of every business is unique, isn't it? And the
Yeah.
relationships that the founders have with their team.
Yeah. But I very much take it as my responsibility as one of a guy I used to work with who I call on for advice. He runs an amazing business called Matrix APA, said, because he's a founder who stepped back and not only has one CEO, but now has kind of 4 different brands with 4 CEOs. And he's gone through, he's given me some great kind of advice on how he did it as a founder. But one of the things he said was when someone walks in the room and says, "Who's the boss?" they need to be pointing to you. So you've got to do whatever you need to do to make
To
sure
make
that
sure,
that happens.
yeah.
And that's every single day, making sure that you're not, I'm not resting back on what Harriet might do and forming my own opinion about what needs to be done. And I think I've done that quite quickly because I am a natural decision maker, actually. And she's been kind of supportive in kind of saying, "What do you think?" and, letting me make certain decisions. But I've got her there to ask advice on things where I might not be quite sure because of the business history.
Which is nice, isn't it? It's a quite a neat setup.
Mm.
And like you say, now Harriet's doing her favourite thing as well, so everyone sort of starts to fall into a really happy place, which is going to be great for the business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she would say herself, she's not, there are things where she just doesn't have an interest in it, and
Yeah,
that's totally fine. Like we all have different interests in different things, and that's what makes a business work.
yeah. If only everybody saw that. So obviously, I'm sure most people know the name's quite a good clue, but in the press release when you were announced to be CEO, it talked about the areas that you're going to focus on in
Mm.
terms of the partnership stuff, looking at international retail and things like that. Maybe just give us a quick insight to, I'm sure none of our listeners don't know about the business, but what the business has, because it is a very wide offer already.
Yeah,
When you
absolutely.
look at it, and like as I said, we've used you for lots of promotions with clients in the past, but really only use the biscuit side. And you've got all this cake, and you've got the gifting, and
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
might be quite good to explain. And then, like, if you could then give us some insight into where you think the potential is for the business now as you start to grow in your role.
Yeah, sure. So yes, Biscuiteers is built on hand iced, that's important, hand iced giftable biscuits. And actually, it started because Harriet and Stevie's joint background in, they had a catering business, they still have that catering business run by their eldest daughter. And Harriet had a bit background in e-com and PR, and they just saw a gap in the market for quality food gifting. So it wasn't born from a passion for making iced biscuits necessarily. It was born from there's a gap in the market here that we could probably answer to. And they went through lots of different versions of what that could be and landed on iced biscuits. And actually, when they started the business, the premises were very near the City and Guilds Art College. So employed art students who needed extra work to
Brilliant.
start doing that. And I think what makes this business stand the test of time is that biscuit is a blank canvas, and it is artistry that you're watching come to life. Whether on and whether we sell a biscuit or not, we can make a biscuit look like anything. And last week we did a collaboration with the Women's Prize and did all the front covers of the books in a biscuit form. And watching the team do that it is art.
I
You are
bet, yeah.
watching art happen.
They didn't let you do it, Fran.
Oh no, God no! I wouldn't let myself do it. Um, no, I mean they're incredible artists in their own right, and obviously the business has started at a point where social media starts to take off, and people want to watch all of that come
Yeah.
to life, and it's only getting more and more intense with other platforms like TikTok and that generation just watching how things work and watching how things are made. So it really plays into that. So we do hand iced biscuits in all different kind of shapes, sizes, guises, licenses that we take on, like Paddington, for example. But what has also grown out of that is product diversification through brownies, chocolates, macarons. We have a patisserie arm that provides patisserie to events. And there's always a Biscuiteers hand ice twist to a lot of that stuff, you know, hand ice brownies, hand ice chocolates, and bringing that artistry to those different products. But it was always very much set up as a gifting business, and it still very much remains that. But the product diversification allows us to talk a little bit more. We sell mince pies at Christmas and Christmas cake at Christmas, which is a bit more self-treating. And everything is done end to end in the production site in Wimbledon, from design to baking to then hand icing to dispatch to delivery. It's all done in that it's done 360 in-house. And the business is multi-channel, so it has its own e-commerce platform and has done from the very beginning, but it also sells into about 42 different wholesalers at the moment and has well over 1,000 corporate partners who gift either their staff or their clients, use it for event engagement. So it's already a multi-channel business. Still very much weighted to the e-com side, which is about 56% of the business's turnover. And I've been brought in to grow the business, obviously, to take it to that next level. It's in its late teenage years, which is a really difficult time for a business and a person. Business, yeah, there's very similar things. And where I saw the opportunity when I started to look at the role and consider whether I'd go for the role and then through the process take on the role, is how much more opportunity is because the product allows for it. Not only is there always going to be more designs and more partnerships we can do because of that blank canvas. And obviously I've got a lot of backgrounds in Not on the High Street of what sells in gifting in terms of design wise or theme wise that Biscuiteers doesn't do currently and could grow into quite easily because everything's done 360 and we can do it ourselves in a very agile way, but also in that wholesale and corporate side. So they have a strong returning customer base in wholesale and corporates, but it could be even bigger based on who we're not talking to today that we could be. And the plan in the kind of corporate space is to reach out to more people and get more people on board who are there regularly gifting their new starters, or who are gifting graduates at universities, who are using our printed biscuit arm for events. And it's really more about the size of the team and back to that organisation point, the process the team goes through and fixing that. Whatever size of the order, whether it's, you know, £100 or it's 20 grand, you have to go through the same process. So we need to make sure that we're going after the bigger ones whilst keeping the process.
The upside's the same work, but yeah.
Same work, but more upside financially, but making sure that we look after those returning customers, but that the process is slicker so that when you're securing £500, you're not taking as long as you do when you're securing £20,000 or above. So that's very much the plan in there. In terms of wholesale, we've got some really strong wholesale connections across luxury retailers, from starting to go out into different types of retailers. So we've recently launched on Moonpig. My good friend Polly, who moved from Not on the High Street over to Moonpig as trading director, told me when we were talking about coming onto Moonpig that Moonpig don't deliver to 1% of postcodes in the UK. So they reach 99% of people in the UK, and they're all card first. So they only ever market on the card. So selling on Moonpig, they're not marketing against you. You're an add-on onto that where someone is already looking to get a really lovely gift to someone really quickly.
Upsell, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's exploring commercial relationships where the brand can sit there and do its thing without having to compete with who they're selling with.
Yeah.
And then international is certainly something that we need to look at. So the vision I've given the business for the next 3 years is to be a globally known business, multi-channel, famous for the most unique, innovative, edible works of art. And we're not globally known yet. We do ship to over 100 countries, mostly in Europe, a little bit to America, where there's a massive opportunity, except for the fact, of course, biscuits are scones in America. So we've got to push through that barrier.
Biscuiteers doesn't have quite the same running about, does it?
Cookie-a-tear doesn't work as
They
well.
spoil everything, don't they?
They do. And really, it's just been about time and getting into the right places or doing kind of marketplaces. UAE is a massive market as well, where this kind of luxury gifting brand, I think, would be absolutely loved. We sell in a few places over there, but it's going to be all about relationship building exactly where we need to, and getting something that's mutually beneficial, that works really well and talks to a customer that doesn't know about us and will come to love us in the way that our own customer base does.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so how are you managing to prioritize? Because there's lots of different bits going on there. Like you say, improving processes to opening up new markets, opening up new channels and stuff.
Yeah. I've embedded a plan that I'm going to bore everyone with every single day, and I've told them that. So yes, we've got our kind of 3-year vision. We've got our stepping stone to that, which is our annual goal. And under each of those is 3 really key objectives. And that is growing our customer names. It is making sure more percentage of our sales through B2B is from volume contracts, and it's product optimization. And then there's initiatives under each objective that people are responsible for. And from my experience at Not on the High Street, the way something like that comes to life is being relentlessly focused on delivering those initiatives you've set out that should be delivering those things. And it's saying, if you're not hitting target, not how do I hit target, it's how do I grow customer names, how do I grow the volume contracts, how do I optimize the products.
So it's
because then
breaking it down.
Yeah, exactly. It's back to that organizing things so that it makes sense in my head. And saying to everyone, right, you're responsible for this bit here, you're accountable for that, and we're going to be revisiting that all of the time to keep on track. And sometimes we might pivot, and sometimes we might be done and we move on to the next thing and something new goes on the list. But these are the 3 things that are the stepping stone to getting us to that 3-year vision. And it's all about accountability and making sure people in the business know what they're accountable for, and that I show what I'm accountable for, and that we show up for each other in doing that. The other thing I'm trying to introduce, it's only just started, is a deprioritization list. And I've given the team a goal to fill it up. So this happens in any business I've been in, where you want to do everything because everything seems like an amazing opportunity that you can't miss out on. But if you do that, you're just panic doing everything. You're fighting fires all of the time. So I want them to every day go, is what I'm doing playing to these 3 things? And if it isn't, I'm going to put it on the deprioritization list. And we can revisit that of like, oh, we deprioritized that, but actually let's bring it back in.
That's a thing now, yeah.
It is. But really what I want us to do is go back to it and say, look how much we didn't do to get to where we needed to get to. Fill that page up for me. Which is an entrepreneur's nightmare. Because you want to do everything. And I've kind of said that doesn't mean that sometimes there's going to be things where we just have to do it, because there absolutely are. It's not a strict kind of, there are going to be blurred lines, but I want that page full by the end of the year, if not spilling over into pages and pages of, I didn't do this thing that day because it didn't impact those 3 things.
Yeah, but we've nailed those and then we move on. Because it's a very good way of doing it, like you say, because then rather than, it's a bit like, what's the analogy about eating an elephant, isn't it? Where do you start? It's like one mouthful at a time. And if you can break it down, and so people then realise what their part of the bigger vision is as well, then they get a real collective buy-in to where the business, and it creates an energy. We've seen it a lot with our clients.
I think so. And I think it was proven in my team at Not on the High Street. And I think if any of them were listening to this, they'd agree with that, Yeah, exactly. It's the one of the things they called me on my 9-year anniversary was simplifier in chief, and I think that's
a massive compliment.
I did, because things get so complicated, and if I can simplify something in my brain, whether it's something to do with work or something to do with home, I feel so confident in what needs to be done, and then I get it done.
Perfect. There's no argument against that, is there? But sometimes it's very difficult for certain brains to see that, isn't it? And that's like, again, why you need a mix of a team.
Yeah, definitely.
So Harriet, reading about her as well, she's a big advocate for supporting women in business. Is that a passion of yours as well?
Yeah, I think it's hard not for it to be a passion when you are a woman, right? In the
Well, I'm nodding.
yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Yes, it is a passion, I think, and I've been at, not on the high street. It was a passion too. 80% of the workforce, 90% of the partners. It was founded by Holly Tucker and Sophie Cornish, and whether it's their story or it's someone else's, it's women have had a lot harder to try and run businesses, own businesses, be represented on senior leadership team. I haven't myself. I've been really lucky in that I haven't experienced that being a limiter for me because of the women who have paved the way ahead of me. And in fact, in every business I've been in, there's been a female, more than one female leader who is more than giving it to, to their male counterparts.
Yeah.
So I feel passionate about it because everyone should feel passionate about it. It's a non-negotiable.
It's the only way you're going to create the change that's needed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the gender pay gap still really annoys me. But that hasn't been the case in the businesses I've worked for, I don't think. And so I feel incredibly lucky, and would be something that I would very naturally continue into whatever business I was in. And empowering, having managed male and females alike over the years, there is this sort of apologetic thing in females where, you want to do everything perfectly, and I'm kind of massively stereotyping here, but in general with men, you feel much more empowered naturally to just, I don't quite know what I'm doing, but I'll give it a go. And I think that's just because of the hundreds of years of history behind it that feed into culturally and socially how you're raised as a male and a female. I think probably the most important step I take in that is with my son. And is raising him to be a male who sees female and males as equals and everything in between. And I think I do that well. And I think he shows signs of not seeing it as weird if men and women aren't seen as equals, and would be kind of like, I don't get that. Why is it like that? And that's good, because then you fuel the fire and say, well, this is everything we've had to work for. So I think it's my responsibility as the mother of a boy, to kind of show him how he needs to treat female counterparts in everything he does.
But I think it also comes in as you're a leader of businesses as well, is that you need to ensure there is always a level playing field for everybody to excel, because the skill sets that everybody has, whether they're men or women or anything in between, it's how do we give them a platform or a stage to perform?
Yeah.
Which will always be for the good of the business in the end, and the good of
them, doesn't matter
personally, that they'll succeed.
Yeah. So I think I am passionate about it, but I don't see it as an option. That is just how it should be. And to your point, it's the level playing field, and it's being fair in anything, regardless of what gender someone is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one of the team here at the agency. She's head of our social and influencer, and she's an amazing lady. And she is also a director of something called OK Mentor. We'll give it a shout out, which is a platform for mentoring women in the creative industries across the world.
Amazing, yeah.
And it's just incredible. And so I've spent, when she said, she was brilliant, she's right, open up your book. Who do you know? Who can you get on there? And it's just, that's what's great, Basically, she saw me as old, not as anything other than that. I've just known more people. But it's great. But I get such a kick to say, right, well, I've introduced about 5 or 6. I've had some of the podcast guests recently. We introduced them into this network, and they love it because it's something you can give time, and then you realise that is what's going to create the change, where you're giving permission and passing advice that you've forgotten. Right, yeah. She'll be in touch. Especially with the creative side, that's what makes it even fun. I've always worked in the agency world, and it is. And it tends to be, I think, a fairer world, our agency world, because because if I think of the senior team that's here, most of them are women, and it's great. And it's not because the women, it's because the brilliance at the jobs. But the platform's been much leveler to allow them. It's less of the old boys club. Because if you're creative, if you've got a skill, you're going to rise to the top.
Yeah, exactly. And that still happens. That still goes on in lots of places, right? But certainly my leadership team at Biscuiteers is all female, and it's because they're all excellent at what they do, not because they're female or male.
Yeah. So, quick question on you again. In terms of as you've developed and you've worked for some amazing organisations, very different in a good way. Have you actively realised how your sort of leadership style has developed, or have you just sort of just gone, that works, I'll keep doing it? Yeah.
I think it's been a bit of both. I think the main thing is I'm really cognizant of it. So, and I've put a lot of effort into being the leader I want to be and making people feel how I want them to feel. So there's that famous saying, isn't there, that people don't remember what you've said, it's how you make them feel. So I started off being kind of a manager of one, and the manager 101 stuff, having a one-to-one, making sure you do your job and XYZ and having a bit of a chat. But what I kind of developed, not on the high street, and there was some great kind of in-house and external training on this, is actually just being a self-aware growth mindset person to start with, and building from there how you build a great team around you to do. And you can only really do that, I think, as you start to build a team, because you have to rely on lots of different people to do the different things that make the team function all together. I think what I've always wanted, and I've learnt this from having bad management actually, is to be someone, to set an example of someone who shows up and is accountable for what they do, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, puts your hands up when you do things wrong, doesn't hide behind anything, because I've experienced that, and you lose respect for people when they don't do that, I think. It is someone who will be honest with kindness when something needs to be different, or a behaviour needs to be changed, or something didn't quite land. And until I spoke about my my best manager ever at BBC Children Need, Jane. She was the first person in my career, and this is like I've hit 30 at this point, who just gave me some really honest feedback about how I did something. It probably seemed really small to her, but it was almost a light bulb, life-changing moment where I was like, oh, no one's ever told me that. That's really useful. I'll use that feedback to my advantage. And from then, I've realised how much I love to hear feedback, good or bad, to shape who I am and what I do. So then I've always tried to do that back, because I know how good that felt and what I was able to do from that. So, and it's kind of called radical candor, isn't it? Where you're giving feedback, but you're doing it from a place of kindness, where you want somebody, you can see that if somebody did something a bit differently, they might build trust more, or they might have better work-life balance, or, and I've worked on that so that it's a natural thing to do, and so that giving feedback doesn't become this big scary thing. It's like, by the way, I observed you did this, you might have benefited from doing it in this way, or, I've observed you kind of talk over people, which is actually feedback I have got before. I've observed you talk over people in calls, and it means that they don't get a chance to listen. And I was like, yeah, I've noticed I've started doing that. I don't know why I've started doing that. And you kind of have to go a bit deeper, right? What's going on in your life at that point? So I think it's those two things. It's being accountable. It's giving radical candor and wanting people to succeed from it, and be better from it. And the other one is enjoyment. That is one of my core values, is enjoy it. Like, we spend so much time at work. I don't want it to be boring. I want us to have a nice time and to create a good conversation and to laugh about things when they should be laughed about. And so I think I've shaped that over time, but I've been really aware that that's how I feel best if I do that, and I can see the benefit if I do that with others. And so I just keep doing that, and I keep being self-aware of, like, if I need to be the first person that says to myself, I didn't do that quite right, I shouldn't have said something like that. and I will then go and say it to that person. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you yesterday. I should have done. You know, I'm
That's
sorry I wasn't
interesting.
quite present in the room.
Yeah.
I should have done. And I've taken that
Yeah, because we all
into
have days off, don't we, when we're not quite firing. And
absolutely. And you
you're a
go, my
human
head was all
being.
over the place
Yeah.
because of this, but that's no excuse. You know, I should have done this. And the more you practice those things, the more it just, you know, being like that, doing that makes me feel fulfilled. So therefore it's a kind of, then you keep doing it because
Yeah.
it
You
feels
get a
right. It's
natural
a gut
kick, don't
thing.
you?
It
Yeah.
is. It's a gut thing of like, that feels right. And I've not just taken that from work. I do that with my children as well, and how I parent as well, you know, being accountable, trying to listen, not getting stressed, you know, being the calm presence, all of that stuff. I think, yeah, I've worked on the two being really similar.
I think it was interesting. I got some feedback from our chair about probably 4 or 5 years ago, because I always worry about what people think, and to nearly a fault sometimes, and they sort of take the mickey out of me, so you're just too nice. And I was worried, well, you know, if I said that to Fran, would you be upset? And he just said to me, and it was interesting, he said, well, with your kids, and I've got 4 of them, he said, how are you with them? Will you give them, as he called it, honest feedback? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, of course you will, because you love them and you know you're giving them the advice to help them be the best people they can be. He said, you've got to then bring that to work, because it's wonderful. Now, they might be a bit at first like, oh, Steve said that. But if you deliver that in your style, they'll run off the cliff for you. And he's right. But it's hard, because you're like, oh, but I've got to criticise you. But it's not. You just say that my experience, I found doing that way, won that person over or got that deal through the line. And
Exactly. And if you just come back to that, I want this person to do well from this feedback, and if you word it in a respectful way, you know, then you can't. I don't think you can really go wrong, or you can certainly get home, even if it's not well received, and go, I still did the right thing. I
I think you talked about you go, yeah, I did the right thing. They might still be on a journey to mature to understand that. But they'll probably be in a podcast in 10 years ago. The feedback Fran gave me was life changing. But it is, isn't it? Because we sometimes need a bit of reflective time to go, yeah, I was.
You do. You definitely do. I think there's my partner said to me the other week, which was really sweet. He'd kind of said, I've realised something about you that's lovely, and that is you will always find a fondness in anyone. You will find the thing in anybody that you find that makes you happy or brings
The
you
warmth,
joy, or that you're fond of them for, and you kind of zone in on that fondness, to connect better or to work better and that's, I hadn't really spotted that myself, but I have lots of favourite people in the whole wide world. And they are all my favourite people in the whole wide world, because I think I do like to find out about people, curious, what makes them tick, and I think I'm looking for that, what do I connect with about them, and then use that to help you be the leader you want to be with them.
Yeah, exactly. And understand your way in. And like you say, each person is very, very unique, isn't it? And if you just blanket a behaviour, you won't get that performance.
Totally. And I think also, I just don't like being annoyed. I hate being
Negative.
annoyed. It annoys me. I don't like the negative energy for it. So if you find a fondness in everything, or a kind of way to smile about everything, which is so the way my dad thinks, and I get it from him, then you're kind of going through life really being in the moment and enjoying it.
Interesting. So it's not a naivety. You know that person's got other sides, but if you see the positive, you drag that out of them nearly.
Yeah.
Love it. Look, I'm just looking at the time as usual. We're coming towards the end. So one sort of reflective question, and I think we've started to get onto it a bit there, Fran. But like thinking either Fran starting at the BBC or Fran starting at Not on the High Street, or even now, what would some bits of advice that you've now got in your memory banks that you'd love to pass on to young Fran, so she can rise even quicker, if possible, to the heady heights you're at now?
Yeah, I think we probably have tapped on it a little bit. I think it's that don't be so scared of people. I think in my very early career, you know, I was really scared to, I'd still
Sort
kind of
of a
speak
titan
up,
early.
but
Yeah.
like be really
Yeah.
scared to say my opinion, or kind of, are people going to think I'm stupid? And so I think there was a bit of that to start with, not to be scared of people, and to to phase into being self-aware as quickly as you can, because I think that only helps you in all aspects of your life, and be honest with yourself about where you might need to improve or be better or do something differently, and still love yourself for that. Don't be hard on yourself, but love yourself for being honest with yourself and wanting to do better and be better. And I think, you know, just enjoy them every moment that you're in. You know, don't don't think too much about the future or where you're going. Maybe it's just kind of enjoy what you've got right now and learn from what you've got right now, and I think the future will happen whatever. Like
Yeah, I like
it'll
that.
happen to you whatever it is, and you'll make the most of it.
I think it's interesting, yeah, listening to your answers earlier as well. That makes a lot of sense. But you've not been calculated, sounds a terrible word, but you've thought, does that organisation I'm going to join give me an opportunity to grow? And because you mentioned that with each one of them, you thought the
Yeah, that's
BBC I
true.
can move across. Not on the high street, I've got this, and now you've got that. And I think that's just smart. That's not calculated. That's just smart, right? Give myself my odds to grow. Because, like you say, if you're going to an organisation that's just basically ticking along for the rate, you're soon going to get bored.
Yeah, totally. And I don't like being bored.
None of
No.
us do. I don't think there's any. After only meeting you a couple of times, Fran, I don't think there's any worries with that. I think your character is going to be Biscuiteers' real gain. So I hope everything goes
Thank you.
fantastically well, and
Yeah, thank
we'll
you.
check in. But
Yeah,
yeah,
check in a year and see if my plans worked.
see where you are. Well, we'll only be 1 year into a 3-year plan, so we'll check
That's
how we go.
true. That's true. Yeah.
Tick those first
Yeah.
strategic pillars off, and then move
Yeah.
on to the next.
I'll
Love
come
it.
back anytime. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for giving us the time.